My name in Hungarian pronunciation is Boldizsár, but it is too much complicated for all the foreigners, so I'm Boldi from the CrySyS Lab. That's it. Today I will talk about what happened in the last year on the field of targeted attacks, not to be so boring, because partially I will introduce you some latest results, that means that are more fresh than the last Hacktivity. But as long these two interesting research was carried out in February and March, and you probably already know about that, I try to add some other material and gives you a summary about targeted attacks, because I guess you also read the newspapers and web pages about all these attacks, but I think that you will find some things that are novel for you, and you will also feel like, okay, I cannot follow this topic anymore because there are just too many attacks and too many stories on and I think it will be evolving even more, and more stories will come. Of course, let me begin my story with the Stuxnet. So you all know Stuxnet, that was created to attack the nuclear facilities in Iran. Stuxnet is a very special type of targeted attack because it causes damage in physical devices. So for all the other targeted attacks, we do not see this malicious activity, so it is a bit different from all the other stories, because the level of damage is totally different than from the case when somebody just steals information, especially if the information is just very specific and not industrial secrets used by other parties. So Stuxnet was detected in June 2010, and we next year in 2011 we found another malware at a European company that was attacked by the malware Duku. We named Duku, we discovered Duku, and we made the first analysis of Duku. And why Duku was interesting is because Duku has a relationship to Stuxnet. Most likely the same guys created it. That means that most likely Israel and US was involved in creating Stuxnet, and we can probably think that the same attribution goes for Duku. After we revealed the information about Duku, we also identified the dropper with the help of the company. That was very important because it contained a zero-day Windows exploit that can be used on any version of Windows, maybe not on 95 or something, but still it is possible. And it used or abused embedded font handling. That means any type of document that can carry embedded fonts can be a dropper or installer or any kind of malware by this means. That means that we found in a doc file, a Windows document, but any other type of files like PDF, even Windows help files or anything can carry the same attack vector. We also developed an open source Duku detector toolkit, which was also interesting. Then in 2012, in May, we participated in an international collaboration on investigation of a novel malware, which we called Skywiper, or others called it Flame or Flamer. At the end, we use currently the name Flame, which was again an interesting targeted attack against Middle East. We think that the same actors are behind it, but the numbers are much higher. So I mean, for Duku, we know only about 20 super high-profile victims. For Flame, the number of victims was around 10,000, and 75% in Iran, and let's say 1/4 in Sudan, which is also interesting. And Flame had also some cousins like Gauss and SPE, which was investigated by Kaspersky mostly. This was the story for the last year, and let's go for the novel stories. One of the interesting researches we carried out was Miniduke, which has a corresponding other malware called ItaDuke. So the story began when FireEye found a document with a zero-day PDF exploit, that means Acrobat Reader exploit, in February. The PDF document contained a malware. And later on, just 2 weeks later or something like that, some malicious document was received from the internet that contained the same zero-day exploit, but a totally different malware. And the interesting story was that one of the victims who received this document was a Hungarian guy. We could not identify him, but this was the reason for a collaboration with Kaspersky on this topic. So we worked together with Kaspersky on the Miniduke problem. Because the first, the malware that was found in the FireEye case is called ItaDuke because of the Italian text that was found inside the exploit. And in the latter, the name Miniduke was chosen for the attack because it is much smaller. In a very short time, not just the Hungarian document arrived, but two other documents, one from Belgium and one from Luxembourg. And they, for the Hungarian one, it contained something about a seminar for human rights. The other two documents contained information about foreign policy of Ukraine and NATO membership of Ukraine. And it is very interesting and important that the content of these mails and documents are generally related to those that are the victims. So even if we cannot identify who was attacked, just the country where the document is originating from, so who received the file, it is very suspicious to have such foreign policy documents. So we expected that something big can happen because we don't expect that somebody attacks librarians who are working on the foreign policy of Ukraine, but rather possibly politicians because it is from Luxembourg and Belgium. So the investigations on Miniduke was just about 1 week, and the most important topic was to find out what is going on. So not the technical analysis is the most important in these cases, but the malware threat intelligence to understand what is going on, as Mikko already told you sooner. So at the end, we could extract information about other victims, and we obtained something like 60 IP addresses that were attacked by the malware through different command and control servers and different files. And for half of them, we could not really say who is behind them, because these IP addresses can be like DSL addresses and so on, when you have to go to the government or go to the ISP to find out who is the real victim, so which makes it impossible to do. But for the other 30, they were IP addresses belong to different organizations. And just by checking who is information, we could obtain, okay, this IP address belongs to some foreign ministry of this state, the foreign ministry of that state, defense office of another state, parliament in another country, Congress, and so on, and also some human rights organizations and so on. So once we obtained this list of IP addresses, of course, we wanted to inform them as soon as possible. So this is why the whole research was only 1 week long. And I show you why it is important, because we think that we could stop this activity before they obtained various important information or they reached their goals. And that's good. So the stages. First, the PDF creates a temporary executable file. Then this executable installs itself to another location. And then the executable connects to the CNC server and updates itself. And finally, now, in this stage, it is somewhat dormant. It waits for another update. And it is just a backdoor. It cannot be remotely controlled and so on. And this is why I mentioned that probably they did not reach the goal, because most of the infected machines were in this dormant state waiting for another update. And only in the next stage, a much larger malware has the functionality to get information from the victim, so collect information, do espionage, or grab the keyboard activity, and so on. So this strange three-phase activity shows us that most likely the target was to backdoor as many victims as we can with a known zero-day attack, so 2 weeks after it was found. And later on, we will do our criminal or state-backed espionage activity on those computers. Let's go back, okay. One interesting thing was that Google and Twitter was abused to coordinate the malware. So the malware did not have a hard-coded CNC, command and control server address. Instead of it had some hard-coded Twitter accounts, and it checked Twitter for information. And Twitter contained some strange messages from particular users, like this one saying that the weather is good today, sunny, and then an encrypted URL that is the actual command and control server. We were aware about 4 different CNC servers. Later, this list was a bit extended, and another one in Panama, which is the main central because it was used the stage 3 code that is for the cyber espionage. And interestingly, these CNC servers were not cleaned after the disclosure of this information, so maybe some of them are still running. Of course, as the victims were notified and so on, most likely these servers do not get much information except from security researchers, but maybe they are still running. And here how it looks like in Twitter, another message, my native town was ruined by the tornado and so on. The PDF exploit is interesting in this case because it was not that professional. It was professional in the sense that it could get around the newest protection mechanisms like sandboxing mechanism of the Acrobat reader, but it was far from perfect because, for example, with small memory machines like computers with 1 GB memory or lower, it never worked well. And in some Adobe Acrobat versions, it hanged many times. And even with the best combinations, it ran only 2 from 4 cases and so on. This is where if you buy exploits, then you have to go to professionals who have quality in exploitation techniques and the exploit works all the time, because otherwise it can get suspicious. So most likely these documents were recognized by the actual victims that, okay, I opened this document and my computer almost froze and something bad is happening, so I want to check what is going on. And this way it is the chance is much higher that you will be caught. One other idea is that there are mitigation tools like the Microsoft EMET tool that can protect you against this kind of 0 days. Because ROP protection and several other protection mechanisms that are implemented in EMET can really avoid this attack to be running successfully on Adobe Acrobat. The only concern is that, for example, with EMETs, you sometimes have false positives, and you have to deal with your customers or people at the organization that, okay, my computer again said that we are under attack, although there is nothing there happens nothing interesting. Just some strange code is running. Okay, so that was Miniduke, a very rapid, interesting research about an attack against governmental institutions. We notified CERS, we notified NATO, we notified everybody who we could to solve the issue, but we unfortunately could not get all the other similar Twitter messages. So therefore, we don't know exactly how many other CNC servers existed and how many other IP addresses could be infected by the same group. Hopefully, the list is short. The next topic was Teamspy. In March 2013, the Hungarian National Security Authority, in short NSA HAN, asked us for support to deal with some problem. They already recognized that there is some espionage going on in the governmental systems, and somebody stole very important diplomatic material, which we actually don't know exactly because it is secret. But they were already analyzing communication, malware, pieces of malware, and so on, and asked our help to handle the situation and know more about the attack. Again, the goal is to understand if the attack was done by a criminal organization, or it is state-backed, it is targeted, or they just wanted to steal credit card information, and unfortunately they took some document files, or what was happening. In this case, it was a watering hole type of attack that somebody installed Java exploit on some cracked, hacked web pages. and whoever went to those pages could be infected by their stuff. The name Teamspy comes from the fact that they abuse the TeamViewer, a known remote access tool, in the terms that they installed onto the victim's computer, and it was run, so the TeamViewer was running silently and actually modified somewhat to do not have any signal on the system that you are running TeamViewer, and also having additional features like downloading files from the remote computer and so on. But the trick is good because you cannot blacklist TeamViewer in most of the environments. And most of the code is in TeamViewer itself, and only a small amount of code is for the modification of the behavior. So therefore, you don't have to program that much, and you can reuse your tools, and the main module will be not blacklisted any time. And we see rise in this type of attacks. I mean that in many cases, attackers now use VNC and other known proxy technologies, SDKs, remote access tools, and so on, which will most likely not be banned or blacklisted, only the small piece of code that the attackers wrote. But after it is revealed and inserted into the antivirus tools, you can make another one easily because your code is very short. So for Teamspy, our research identified multiple malware samples, like 50 other different small pieces of malware. But the two major malware elements were the botnet part of this campaign or series of campaigns, because the whole story goes back to 8 years to 2004, and the Teamspy gang was active for various different campaigns. That means that once they carried out something against Iran, and we have totally different sets of IP addresses who are the victims. How can it be? Because they used different CNC servers and different databases for some campaigns and different dates, and therefore we can separate all these activities one from the other. But in all of the cases, we think that the attacks were targeted attacks and not just criminal activity. The main malware family has two major parts. One is this TeamViewer abuse-based mechanism, and they have their own botnet mechanism and remote access tool as well. So sometimes they even used the other, we don't have a right name for that, the other tool set for infecting machines, and once they felt like, okay, we need some additional functionality, they installed the TeamViewer-based stuff as well. So it was complicated, and the attackers had a bunch of trash information left on the CNC servers as well. So it is not just complicated. It looks like like my desk at the university. I have a pile of paper here, a pile of paper there, and so on, because I'm not organized that well. It's not that interesting. Teamspy had some relationship to another malware campaign which is called Sheldor. Sheldor was used by some criminal gang to get credit card information and so on, and that was really strange. On the upper half, you can see the Sheldor control page, and the lower page, you can see exactly the same format for the Teamspy CNC server. But at the end, we found that most likely Sheldor source code and Sheldor-related information was leaked some years ago, and the Teamspy gang just took the code and used for their own goals, and this is the relationship. So there is no probable relationship between the two organizations or threat actors, but just this kind of similarity. Teamspy was looking for files, and some strange words in the file names is Saidumlo. I don't know actually how to pronounce it. It is a Georgian word for secret, or as you can see, parole and secret in Russian. And of course, one indication that this is not the general criminal malware, that somebody wants to grab PGP files, for example. It is not that usual to collect PGP files by any producer of malware. Here are just some CNC servers that were found, and the interesting story is how you can find these type of CNC servers. Like, for example, one way is that once we knew that bulbanews.org is some CNC server, you can check if the guy or the alias or fake name who registered this domain, in this case, Krepov Bogdan Serafimovic, so what other domains are related to this guy. And we found Planeta News and Kortopla.org, which were also CNC servers. And this way you can grow your research and find out new CNC servers and whatever. How it looked like, they had some control panel when there were logins and passwords for particular Teamspy victims, and also some user status if the computer is actually running or not. And you just click on one of them, and immediately you see what the victim is typing and what are the activities of the victims, which is kind of cool for the attackers, not so cool for the victims. Okay, so I finished. This was the two pieces of research which we carried out in February and March. Of course, we are always doing this and that, but not such. We don't have any material that can be published at the present, either because it is not so cool or because it cannot be published for other reasons. But in the next few minutes, I try to summarize what happened with in the internet with others and what other research materials were released. One well-known, I guess you heard about this campaign, was Red October, for what Kaspersky started investigations in October 2012, but they only released the information, the detailed information, in January 2013 about the campaign called Red October, where a very short summary is that it is related to Russian language. Maybe the attribution can be that somebody around Russia created this campaign, but nobody knows. Mainly exploits Java. It is 5 years long running, and the complexity marker is that they have something like 60 command and control server domains. The victims are all around the world. Many diplomatic and governmental targets were actually attacked with Red October. In fact, there was one victim in Hungary as well. Okay, that's about Red October. Let's go for the next one. In February this year, Symantec found Stuxnet 0.5. Stuxnet 0.5 is an older version of the Stuxnet malware, and it contains very similar code, but in fact it has a relationship to the Flame malware, more relationship again than we thought historically. And the other interesting thing that the normal Stuxnet, Stuxnet 1, operated by modifying how fast the nuclear uranium centrifuges rotate. And in this case, the older Stuxnet played with the valves to close and open the valves in the not perfect time, and therefore spoiling the enrichment operation and process. Then, in March and April, some, let's say, probably Chinese attacks were disclosed from CrowdStrike, one called Anchor Panda, one called Numbered Panda, also called like Xeshe and so on, and one called Clever Kitten. Not too much information is available on these pieces, but very interesting, and I guess many of you did not or have not heard about these campaigns. Then we had the Apt-1 report from February 2013, when Mendiat disclosed much information. You already saw it in Mikko's slides and video about the Chinese-based attacks that were carried out through 7 years. Again, some complexity markers. 100 organizations, more than 2,000 fully qualified domain names related, almost 1,000 CNC servers, hundreds of samples. So that was a huge operation and a huge research from Mendiant in this case. Of course, again, the attribution and some pieces of information cannot be really checked, so you cannot be always sure that all the information written in these reports are valid. The victims are mainly in the US, what Mendiant checked, but also all around the world they found attacks. Okay, later on, Kaspersky reported NetTraveler, also called TravNet, when more than 300 high-profile victims were identified in various countries, in more than 40 countries. That should be, again, a big operation. Here, the attribution is generally given as China, but again, it is just a speculation, so who knows what happened in this case. Safe. Around the same time, Trend Micro released an information about the targeted campaign called SAFE or SafeNet. More than 12,000 victims. It abuses the CVE called 2012-0158. Around 200 or 150 victims in Hungary. And probably some connection with the Net Traveler malware campaign. Operation Hangover. This was something, again, Mikko already said some words about. Shadow Server and Norman released information about this attack campaign that is attributed to private actors in India, but as Mikko mentioned, but maybe government bought some service from the private sector for carrying out activities, and he mentioned this Angola involvement as well. Here again, very similar exploits were used with various document Office format problems, so Microsoft Office related exploits mainly. Then two attacks where we don't even have a name. Trend Micro released information in July that there is an attack campaign against government agencies in mainly Asia. And in August, Symantec reported that Europe and Asia is targeted by another campaign where they use two malwares that was named like Obscines and Frutas. Later on in September, we saw Kimsuki, which is reported by Kaspersky Labs, and the target is here South Korea. Most likely the attribution is to North Korea, but who knows? Some of the victims were in China, in fact, but the others are on the slide. A detailed report is available on for example, in this campaign, and much more information about the others, like for Red October and so on. There are tens of pages of documentation of how it works and what are the tools. In June, Trend Micro reported Rarstone that was attacking Asian targets in telecommunications, oil and gas, governments, and so on sectors. Main targets are in India, Malaysia, Singapore, and Vietnam. And again, the same 2012-0158 exploit is used most of the time. Then we have Evil Grab and Genicab. Trend Micro reported in September the existence of Evil Grab that collects information like grabbing audio, video, and screenshots. And Genicab was reported by F-Secure in June, which is strangely a Mac OS X and Windows malware attack, and probably against Russian or Kazakhstan-based victims or minority groups or similar. Lately, in September, Kaspersky released long, detailed information about IceFog, which is, again, a malware-based campaign in Korea and Japan. It used very similar exploits, and the number of victims are not so high, but still there are something like more than 160 victim IP addresses in China, and Korea about 100, and so on. It is not the end. The next attack was hidden links. Still in this September, Symantec revealed information about an attacker group they call Hidden Links. It is a multiple years operation. It is China-based most likely, and much better performing than some other groups. They are active since 2009. They have two separate teams, Naid and I don't know even how to spell Mudor. Hundreds of targets. They use 3 0 days, and probably they have 50 to 100 operatives working on the project. And you can see the location of targets. Many targets are in the USA and also in Asia. Okay, that's it. It's like a dictionary. So there were a ridiculously high number of targeted campaigns revealed in the last year, and it is very hard to follow. And most likely I missed some of them and not enlisted on these slides. Why it was so important to talk about that? Because you can see the numbers are enormous. The victims are all around the world, and we are all hacked. what can we do and what will happen and so on. So let's talk about the conclusions or at least to understand what is going on. First of all, these attacks are not done in this year. They are detected or disclosed in the last year. That means that these attacks were under the radar for years, and we were already hacked for years. We are just going to identify these threats, and that's the good news. Because that does not mean that we have to frighten and, okay, we will never find it out what happens and so on. It just began to be analyzed better and to understand the whole problem better. So by finding out more information on these attackers, we find out more ways to protect our assets. And that's the good news again. Most likely many more attacks to come. Because these attacker groups won't go home and change their job to another thing, but they will improve their activities and make new malware to be more efficient against the victims. So most likely many more to come. Of course, the visibility won't be that high, because no times if anybody discloses detailed information about a targeted malware campaign, the press will not so much eager to immediately put it on the headlines, because it is just one from the 100 others. And therefore, attention will be lower on these cases, and we have to keep in mind that anybody who really wants to get current information and specific information against on these threats cannot do just open a /dot anymore. You have to dig more into the details of the publications. You have to check more web pages from first responders and AV companies to have the big picture and the status of the situation. Threat actors are all around the world. That's not new. The interesting thing is that in February we were talking just about, okay, China attacking everybody. Then later on, after Snowden, everybody was pushing USA, NSA, GCHQ, and so on. But as you can see, there are threat actors all around the world. Most likely every country has the cyber capabilities to deliver some kind of attacks like these. So that's not something new, but something that we currently understand better. One interesting thing is that the main goal is still espionage. So we had rumors about NSA activity related to DigiNotar or similar activities when not just information was stolen, but inserted or manipulated. And of course, we know about Stuxnet, but for the other campaigns, the main goal was still cyber espionage, either for state reasons or for industrial means, but still just getting information. Attribution is a very hard problem, as I mentioned, because I'm not happy to tell false information, and nobody can be absolutely sure that an attack is from China, even if it comes from China, it speaks Chinese, it looks like a Chinese attack, but still you cannot say that it is surely China. And there is another problem that now everybody understands, and it is that there are so-called weak victims. So, you know, in Iran, they cannot use Windows Update. They cannot download Java Update from the Java web page because they are banned, essentially. In minority groups, they don't have the budget to have the latest software, probably. They don't have the right system administrators for leakers and all these civil organizations, and therefore they are even more prone to be attacked, and it is very hard to protect them, and there is a high interest to hack them. And that's also important because you have to understand how much is the possibility or the chance that you will be attacked. If you are just a home user doing nothing interesting, most likely nobody will attack you except those guys who want to run ransomware on your computer, get credit card information, or run Bitcoin creation tool, as Miko mentioned again. But otherwise you are not affected. But all the guys here in this room are most likely important for governments to gather information about hacktivism, security research, whatever. So we can expect to be targeted by governmental actors or anybody else, but most likely not for information stealing, like for, oh, thank you very much. So the goal is goal can be different and the tools can be different, but I of course don't tell every grandma at the countryside to be frightened about the APT attacks of the Chinese, because most likely the target is not that. Okay, what about the techniques? What we learned about the stories? The code of the malware generally, so one piece, is not that complicated. There are much more complicated and sophisticated pieces of malware out there for rootkits, botnets, and so on. Because here the goal is to create something that is under the radar for a time, and once it is detected, just to throw out and make another tool. And therefore they use reusable stuff, different techniques to be, again, the next tool won't be detected by the same means, and so on. One interesting thing is that many times they use not so 0 days. I mean that 2 or 3 year old exploits, but that goes back to the weak victim problems, that many of these victims are not installing patches because of some reason, and therefore they are still vulnerable to old attacks. I hope that here we don't have such a big surface for attacks, but yeah, there are 0 days involved if the attackers want really to get into our machines. They use a lot of code, their own or not their own. I mean that they generally use existing modules, VNC, proxies. We saw TeamViewer abuse. Remote tools, either standalone programs or SDKs for creating specific remote access Trojans. Browsers, they use the crypto API of Microsoft, which is very easy to program. You don't have to program too much about AES or RSA, just use the Microsoft tool and parameter with your key. They use compression modules normally, just easily available tools and compile into their stuff. And again, this is good for them because that part of the code should not be rewritten, because it won't be blacklisted by antivirus tools or anybody else, because they are valid, legitimate modules for a reason. So most of the cases, the attack is very simple. And the functionality of these Trojans are not that extended, not like the TeamViewer case. They are just go there, take their information. Probably the attack is more complicated because they go there, they wait, they try to find out what is going on the computer, and once they know what is exactly to be stolen and what is the security infrastructure of the particular company, then they steal the data and get away. We have many different samples, and we observed more and more cryptography usage in this malware. So it began with some obfuscation technique, then later on they use RC4, but currently more and more AES and RSA references can be seen in these tools. So targeted attacks is a hard problem. Protecting against them is not impossible, but we have to learn a lot. And this is the reason why I summarized all these attacks, to emphasize that you have to read the reports to understand the series of attacks better, the techniques behind them better, more about the possible adversaries, and so on. We have to develop better defense. Of course, better tools, we have to buy new products, and so on. But we also have to take care. We need better processes, more attention, and better handling of the incident. That means we need the right guys to work on our assets to protect it. Not just, I mean that we have possibly as a company, we have to have our own guys who understand what is going on. But once there is some suspicion that you were attacked, you need the help of somebody that can really tell you what is going on. And you need more communication, more information sharing, and so on, to be efficient in this field. And that's it. I hope it is in time.